If you just got to the Being a Man Festival, welcome to this session, which is a discussion about fatherhood and being a father. My name is Shane Ryan, and I am the Chief Executive of the charity Working with Men, so aptly named for this. I'll tell you really briefly what we do. We're the Secretariat for the All-Parliamentary Party Group on Fatherhood. We also help other organizations to work with boys and young men primarily. And lastly, we engage in direct service delivery, so we work directly with young men at the times in their lives where they're most likely to need help. So, for instance, the transition between primary school and secondary school, getting a job, or becoming a father, in fact. So, if I turn over here and look at my colleagues here, down here, I'm just trying to work out where everyone is. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, I think it's fair for all of my colleagues to speak for themselves, really, and tell you what they do and where they're from, but I'm just going to go from the back there. So at the back there, we've got Ruben, who is a member of the Young Fathers Collective, and then next to him, we've got Crossman, who is from the charter school, head teacher, and then we have David Bartlett, who is one of the co-founder of the Fatherhood Institute, but also you're also now the ambassador and trustee for the White Ribbon Campaign UK.
Yes.
Yeah. And last but by no means least, we have Anthony George, who is also here from the Young Fathers Collective. So, in order to move things forward, we were given the brief of this book because it's quite a huge brief talking about fatherhood in general. It's a massive brief. So this book, which is not bedtime reading really, earlier this year, MenCare produced this book, and it talks about, it's a kind of global snapshot of fathers' involvement. And one of the most interesting statistics for me in it is that globally, 80% of all men on the globe will become a biological father at some point during their lives. So I know I said I'd close the brief, that kind of opens it a bit more. But it just indicates how important it is, how important fatherhood is to parents, how important it is to children themselves. And what I'm going to do on that note is I'm going to open it up to each of my colleagues to speak for about 5 minutes on what they do and why they are here. Does anyone want to start first? Alex, you're raising your eyebrows. So
Was I?
You can start. You were.
Darn.
Unintentionally, though, maybe you did it.
I unintentionally stepped forward. That's one of those things when you ask for volunteers and the other four guys step back one pace. Thank you. All right. Okay. Well, before I opine on the subject of parenthood, I should probably share with everybody here that when the brief for this session was emailed out to us, I think we were all actually described as parenting experts. And when I shared this with my two children, who are respectively 20 and 16, they are very different young men, but they had a common reaction, which was utter hilarity. So, anything I have to say on the topic is to be taken with a pinch of salt. My interest in the topic of fatherhood is sort of multifaceted. I mean, I suppose, obviously I have a professional interest. I have worked for the last several years in sort of complex urban schools where children very often suffer from unstable parental relationships, and where in some cases, in some communities, the absent father, and I don't just mean absent in the sense of not present within the school life, but absent from the home also, is almost the norm. And dealing with the consequences of that for young people's development, particularly young boys' development, obviously is a significant part of my day job. But it also has a personal resonance, both because I am a father of, as I mentioned, two boys, and also I did not myself have a sort of productive or almost any relationship with my own father. So, I mean, to put that in some kind of context, we've essentially had no contact at all during my adult life, and from memory, relatively little contact during my upbringing either. So I certainly approached parenthood from what I felt to be a position of some insecurity, because I didn't feel, still don't feel, as though I had a role model of what an effective father-son relationship would look like. And in fact, I suppose over the course of the last 20 years of trial and effort, sort of starting with my elder son, we've had to work out what we want our relationship to be. And much of my template for that relationship is negative. I knew what I didn't want it to be, and I had certain sort of aspirations. I mean, fundamentally, I wanted to make sure that we had a relationship and that relationship matured and persisted into adulthood, which obviously was not something I'd experienced. But other than that, it's been a lot of fake it as you make it, frankly. Professionally, sort of bringing it on to that. Professionally, I mean, I think there's also an element there where I found myself in the perverse position of being, in some cases, a sort of quasi-parental figure for really quite large numbers of children. And again, with that sort of underlying, I suppose, degree of insecurity about one's own sort of upbringing. On the one hand, that is an asset, that's an opportunity, because I do feel as though on some level I do know how those children feel. But on another level, I'm not sure I'm always quite as well equipped as I should be to be a part of the solution. So that's sort of where I'm coming from, and I'm interested in exploring some of those issues.
Thanks for that. That's a real insight. I think it's maybe later on we'll discuss the difference between what you do at home and then what you have to do as part of almost that being almost a part-time parent to those at school who don't have any parental guidance necessarily. Ruben, do you want to take it from there?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Ruben, and I work with Young Dads Collective. And what we do there is get young fathers, connect them with services and services with young fathers. We also train services to become more father-friendly. I became a part of that simply because I had my son at a young age, and as having my son, I didn't recognize or support for men. So I never knew that to be an issue until I actually knew there was support for men. So I made it my mission to spread the word and hopefully help every other young father that's out there. I came about some of this simply because, when I was growing up, my vision of a father or what a father should be, believe it or not, pretty much all came from TV. So I've model what I believe a good father to be from TV, and I just wanted to be a good father or have a particular family that lives in the suburb and my son can ride bikes, and I wanted to give my son that life. So working with the Young Dads Collective is allowing me to implement some of those ideas to other young fathers. And I'm here today, hopefully, to share my views, opinions, experience with you guys. Yeah.
Thank you. David, I can see you've got notes. I'm a bit nervous now because there's a lot written on there. So I think we have to let you go next, really, because I think even Anthony's wondering what's down there. So let's go with you next.
Too. And that's because I'm a bit nervous. So. Hi, everyone. So. Fatherhood's really important to me. I am a father, I'm a son, I have a son and a daughter, so it's hugely important to me. Unfortunately, I like talking about it, and I like doing it. So I like it, but it also is sort of essential as well. I feel as though it's not something that's optional. I have to do it. It's sort of a very powerful experience. It sort of bursts out of me. It's something that's very important. So it's personal, but it's professional as well. I helped set up, as Shane said, the Fatherhood Institute, and the starting point for this charity, which has been going for about 15 years, is that fathers and other men in families make a difference to children, in various ways. Sometimes that's great, sometimes it's not, but they do make a difference. And so the Institute tries to influence public policy to respond to that, and for anyone who's engaging with families to be really confident and knowledgeable about how to do that in a way that supports men in a positive role. And I also work now for the White Ribbon Campaign, which is in some ways the other side of the coin. It's about raising men's awareness about the issues of men's violence towards women. So Fatherhood Institute, that's all about promoting a positive, caring masculinity. And in many ways, that's what White Ribbon Campaign is about too. It's about stopping men's violence, and it's about men taking responsibility for that and being part of the solution. So in a way, they're both about the same thing. So different bits of the same thing.
Carry on.
Okay. In thinking about this and scribbling on my bit of paper, I was thinking about, fatherhood, it's really important and amazing, but it's also challenging. In some ways, it's challenging for the same reasons that motherhood is. It's not an easy job, but I think some of it's different as well. I don't think fatherhood is always so clearly defined culturally. I don't think we're so clear about what it means, and sometimes it's defined in opposition to motherhood, as something that's different, but I'm not sure we always know exactly what it is. And it's changing too. Motherhood's changing, but I think fatherhood's changing perhaps in a slightly different way. We're coming from quite a long way over here to becoming, there's an expectation growing that we should be very involved, which wasn't there before. And because it's changing, we often don't have role models to draw on in our own lives or in the media. It's changing, and it's contested. Not everyone feels the same way about it. Not everyone's experienced it in the same way. So it's quite messy and confusing as well, I think. And I think sometimes fathers themselves, sometimes I'm confused about it, and my kids would confirm that too, in fact. So it's confusing. When I was working with the Fatherhood Institute, and I still do that now, we used to run a lot of training courses, and I still do, for teachers, for anyone working with families, about engaging positively with fathers and supporting them to be involved in their children's lives. And one of the things that we did was, okay, well, let's talk about cultural images about fathers. And we'd get a flip chart going, and almost always you'd have a really negative list. We weren't saying, blank sheet of paper, right? But it would be like, okay, fathers, tell me about cultural assumptions about fathers. Not what you think, but what's out there in the media, in our society. Dominant, irresponsible, absent, violent. Quite a big list, mostly negative, actually. And one of the things that was striking about that is that this list came to people very readily, right? But when we explored it and their own personal feelings about fatherhood, two things came through most strongly. One was they really cared about it. They were passionate about this subject, about those roles. And also their own personal experience and their professional lives told them that fathers were not all the same, right? That actually there's a huge diversity in fatherhood. So I think it's quite interesting. We're here talking about fatherhood, and I think we're not going to be able to do this properly unless we acknowledge that diversity. And the other thing that came through in these courses that I run and used to run with the Institute is that this is an issue for women as well as men. And I think it's fantastic there's a lot of women here in the audience. Women have fathers too. Women have relationships with men who are fathers. We do these things actually together, not in isolation. And I'd like us to have a conversation together about that. So, and I'd like us to talk about all aspects of fatherhood too. Sometimes fathers get a bad press, as I was saying. And sometimes, therefore, it's quite tempting to focus on the positives and only on the positives. And they're really important. I care passionately about that. But I think we need to talk about the whole picture. Some fathers are violent, right? Some mothers are too, but some fathers are violent. When I think about myself in my own personal relationships, and when I get angry, I've never been as angry as I have been in my personal relationships, actually. It gets you somewhere. It takes you somewhere that nothing else does. So, and we need to deal with that too. We need to deal with both sides of the coin. So I hope we do that today too. Thank you.
Thank you. That's impassionate.
I didn't look at my bit of paper much.
You didn't, did you? You didn't.
Actually, yeah.
It's a waste of time bringing that.
All right, so
Anthony.
I'm Anthony, father of 4. 2 are my biological children, and I have special guardianship of my niece and nephew since summer last year. Where do I begin? I begin taking on special guardianship with my niece and nephew because I feel that's really important to me. Last year, summertime, I began working for a company called Source Marketing Direct, and it was a marketing company which does a lot of street fundraising events and event fundraising. So this was my first like proper job. I was really like happy to be in the role, and I got a call from social services regarding my niece and nephew, saying that basically my sister's not currently able to look after my niece and nephew, and she had said there's nobody else in the family that could take them in. So I've got this call, and it was just like a shock to the system, and I was just like, well, I said, have a think about it, and we'll call you back in like 2-3 weeks. So that's what they done. I had to think about it, and spoke with my partner about it. At this time, I think my daughter was probably about 5 or 6 months old, and my son was 3. So I've already got 2 children. I've just got a really good job that I love and I really enjoy, and I've got a call from a social worker saying that, asking me basically if I can take my niece and nephew. So yeah, I spoke to my partner. She's all for it. I wasn't too sure. I was like, oh, how are we going to manage? I had all the like sort of negative views on it, if you like, and my partner was really like positive and all optimistic about it, and like, let's do it, let's go for it. So I went with my partner, and yeah, we decided to take them on, and it's been difficult. Yeah, it's been difficult. All my children are under 5, and yeah, it's been a roller coaster of emotions, and it's been crazy. But at the end of the day, for me it's just about not having the next generation go through, or the next generation of my family go through the system, which I had to go through because I was in care from the age of 4. And also my auntie took me in at the age of 12, so I kind of had that kind of relation to I knew what it was like to be taken in by a family member, by a maternal family member. I'll talk a bit about YDC. When I started with YDC, I think at that point I didn't have my niece and nephew. I just had my son and daughter. And yeah, YDC's been great. It's been really, really amazing helping other young fathers and engaging with them, interviewing them, finding out exactly what their lives are like, because mine's been quite different to theirs, obviously. And besides that, it's also been great helping to shape maternity services, children's centre staff, like they've shaped their views on how to engage with young fathers creatively, and how to bring them in and make them feel a lot more included and less socially isolated, and feel like a children's centre is somewhere they can just walk in with their child and not feel uncomfortable in any way because there's too many women, or, you know. And yeah, that's been great. Also, I'll start with when I started working with other fathers was a bit funny story actually. I met with a guy called Shawnee O'Kane from St. Michael's Fellowship, and he was delivering an antenatal session in St. Thomas's Hospital where my son was born. So my partner was pregnant, and we went along to this thing, and not only did he deliver these services, he also ran young fathers groups every week, once a week. And he was like to me, "Oh, nice to meet you, Anthony. Why don't you come to one of my groups?" And at this point, my son wasn't born yet, and I was just feeling like I felt surprisingly confident becoming a father. I thought like it would be an easy ride, and like, yeah, I got this. And 2 weeks into being a dad, like my son was 2 weeks old, I said, "No, I'm calling this guy Shawnee." I went to one of the groups, and like honestly, it was amazing just to see other young dads and share views, and we got food as well. That was the catch. We got fed. Yeah, and that was the starting point of working with fathers. And then I began to kind of like volunteer with Shawnee, do a bit of shadowing his work, and then got with YDC. Also, a company called Father Nature, run by a guy called Crispin Swain, which is a all about fathers, not necessarily just young fathers, getting them to come and do a very like nature-based things, planting flower beds, planting parties. They own an allotment where the fathers can grow produce with their children. That was like an amazing thing for me to go with my son to, and like just have a really nice bonding time with him. And then through all this experience, I applied for a job as a fatherhood outreach worker, not for young fathers, just for fathers generally. And unfortunately, I didn't get that job. And then I applied for another job shortly after as a family learning involvement worker, project worker. And one of the ladies who interviewed me for the previous fatherhood post was also interviewing me for that post. And I got it. So now, through this experience, like I've never done any childcare courses or anything like that sort of thing. Just from experience, I got this job as a family learning involvement practitioner, and that's like my journey sort of up to now. I still work with the Young Dads Collective, and I will never leave them because like they were sort of my stepping stone to where I am now. And yeah, it's just been a great journey, and I don't really know what more to say really about.
You don't have to say anything else if you don't want to. That's fine.
That's me.
Happy with
really.
that?
Yeah.
Okay. Before I kind of open things up a bit, I just want to go back to the book a minute, the thick one. If you look at what's in this book, and it's global, what's most notable is that first and foremost, there's nothing, I think particularly if you work in this field, there's nothing in here that we don't already know. You know, so the same kind of stuff that children do better academically, socially, emotionally, and so on and so forth when fathers are involved positively. What is a little shocking is the fact that there's a dearth of services for fathers across the world, it would appear. And it kind of leads you to wonder, if we know this amount about the positives to dads being involved, why isn't anything happening? You know, so why isn't there any wide movement happening? If you look, I think in the UK, 40% of fathers don't take paternity leave because there's a stigma attached to it. If you look in Office of National Statistics in the mid-90s, you had, I think, around 100,000 single dads in the UK. And now that's more than double. So I think you've got nearly 250,000. But nothing seems to be happening at a ground level. There's still certain stigmas around for instance, taking your leave and wanting to be at home with your children. So I just want to throw that out first and foremost to group.
I'll start with that. I feel like communication is key in whatever role you're working in. If you've got kids and you want to spend time with your kids, just be upfront with your line manager, with your manager. Look, I want to take this leave because I want to spend time with my kids. Like I've had to do that because I love spending time with my kids, almost as much as I love work. In fact, no, other way around. Yeah. So yeah, just being honest and like they will understand. Like they'll understand. Sometimes I feel like going to work is a bit of a break for me. Like so. Sometimes, like I'll prefer going to work, but nah, spending time with my kids is like most important, and it's amazing. So I get if I've got 2 weeks leave, a week and a half of that's with my kids. The rest is just like whatever. If I need to do things like this, or yeah.
Is that shared by other dads that you know? Because I know obviously because of your work, you work with other dads. Is that shared by a lot of those dads?
The area that I work, yeah. there are many dads, but they're not present. They're not present in my children's space, my children's centre. Unfortunately, because it's an Arabic community, and it's quite dominated by Arabic women in their spaces, and the men don't really feel comfortable to come. And I'm not entirely sure why we don't get many men, but they work as well. A lot of them work. And yeah, but I don't know if it's shared. For me, definitely, I'll just be honest with my line manager and say, look, I want to spend time with my kids tomorrow or whenever. Like, can I get leave for that day?
Okay. Does anyone else want to add to that?
Well, what strikes me is that the research is clear in that book and in a lot of other research that's developed over the last sort of 30, 40 years, actually, but it's not as widely known as it should be. Okay, so it's not taught in schools, generally speaking. You know, in order to become a teacher, you know, is there a bit in the curriculum when you're training that says you need to engage with fathers because they have a specific, an important role to play? You know, it's not that different. It's not more important than mothers, but it's not enough just to engage with mothers. You know, having a father involved in their children's education makes a big difference to outcomes for those children. Do teachers know that? Or other health professionals. You know, it's not that widely known. And secondly, the provision of services and the statutory framework around fatherhood is better in some countries than others. Yeah. So, you look at, predictably, some of the Scandinavian countries. I think it's Sweden that has now 2 months of protected leave for fathers on a use it or lose it basis. And take-up of that leave is actually quite strong, but it's taken a generation for them to get to that point. So we can do it, so it's about knowing the research and acting on it.
Anyone else want to?
Yeah, I was just thinking that you're absolutely right. I think the absence of dedicated provision of services for fathers in support of fathers is quite striking. But I think it actually comes back to David's earlier point, which is, that surely is a reflection of a sort of cultural norm, and our cultural norm is some of fatherhood or of the gender roles accruing to parenthood is sort of trapped in a slightly imagined 1950s paradigm, and we're in a transitional phase, and I think it's a very positively transitional phase, but it does seem to be taking quite a long time. Hence, we have things like an improvement in the statutory framework, the availability of parental leave, but still, in this country at least, relatively low take-up of the degree of flexibility that is now available to working fathers, precisely for the reason that I think was mentioned earlier, which is it's not yet the cultural norm. It's not expected in the same way as it is with mothers.
But, I remember, and probably this is misspent youth, but I remember, and obviously not very PC now, but I don't know if anyone remembers the kind of carry-on films. And I've been talking about this for ages, saying that there's no difference between, if you look at some of the early carry-on films and the maternity bits in those, we've really moved on from that. So, the dad's sitting outside and he's having a fag somewhere, and then the child's born, he comes in and he might have a look, or he might just see the mum, and then he goes off to the pub. And now, I think it's 98% of fathers are at the birth. So in respect to that, we've moved on quite a lot, but it doesn't seem as though there's an accepted responsibility, collective responsibility, that dads should be involved.
Thank you to our panel. Thank you to the audience. See you tomorrow if you're coming.